So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make your own virtual tutor. So I made this in Python with LangChain and Gradio, and then as you can see, we've deployed it to HuggingFace. So I've trained this on chapters from the Learn OpenGL book, so we're going to see how well this works. So say hello. Alright, so it's asking us how it can help us with OpenGL related topics. So I'm just going to say, what can you tell me about OpenGL? Alright, so it's going to go ahead and explain what all of this is. And then something else we can display is that it won't tell us anything that's outside of its knowledge base. So let's say, explain what a black hole is. And it says, I'm sorry, I can only provide information related to OpenGL. So that's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first thing you want to make sure is that you have this requirements.txt. This is all of the imports that we're going to be using in our program. So you can either copy and paste this, or I'll provide the GitHub link in the description. Alright, so now once we have this file, we're going to create our virtual environment. So we're going to say python 3-m virtual environment. We'll call this my environment. So we'll go ahead and activate that. Okay, now we can pip install everything. Okay, so now we can go ahead and start working on our main file. So we're going to call this app.py because HuggingFace is going to expect that when we deploy it to that platform. Alright, now we're going to go ahead with our imports, which I'm just going to copy and paste from my existing project. So we're importing OS, we have Gradio for our interface, we want to load our environment variables from here, OpenAI, and then here's all of our dependencies from LangChain. Okay, so the next important step is to get our OpenAI API key. So if you don't know how to do that, just consult their documentation. It's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to copy and paste mine into here. Okay, so now that we have that, we can go ahead and load our environment variables. And then we'll start setting up our OpenAI settings. Alright, now we'll initialize our large language model. And then next we want our embedding model. Okay, so once we have our embedding model, we can then get to work on actually creating our vector database. So the first thing we're going to do is check if it already exists. So if it already exists, we're just going to get access to it. But if it doesn't, we're going to go ahead and create it. So the first thing we want is our directory with all of our documents in it. So we can see here I have this folder called knowledge base, and it just has a bunch of PDFs from the Learn OpenGL book. And then we're actually going to load these into memory. Okay, so all this glob statement is doing is it's making sure that everything it's getting from this directory is a PDF file. Now we can load these documents. Alright, now we want to get to work into actually splitting these PDFs into chunks, so we'll do that like so. Alright, now to get the chunks, we'll do this. Alright, so now that we have all of the chunks from our PDFs, we can load that into our vector store with using our embeddings model. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and verify that everything works. So we're going to print out an embedding from our vector store. All right, so we can see our vector database got created, and now it spits out all of these numbers. So these are the coordinates for one of the chunks in our database. So now that we've verified this works, we can go ahead and get into the chat logic. First of all, we want our system message, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that into here. So you can see it says, you're a personal tutor that only answers questions using provided course materials. The context you receive comes from textbook notes. If you cannot answer the question based on the provided context, say so while maintaining a tutoring tone. So this matches what I showed you at the start of the video. So it's not going to answer anything outside of the context window from our knowledge base. Okay, and then next we want it to have some kind of memory. So we're going to do that here. It's going to be an array of dictionaries of each message. So we have our system message to start. All right, then we're going to have this chat function. So in Gradio, when you pass a chat function, it's going to take two parameters, the actual user provided message and then the history of our chat. So then when this function gets called, we want to append our user message to our messages. All right, and then next we actually want to stream our large language model's response. So now we can iterate through each chunk in the stream. So for chunk in stream, we also want to have our assistant message. It's going to be equal to an empty string for now. So each time we get a chunk, we're going to append that to the assistant message. So chunk dot voices index 0 dot delta dot content. And if that doesn't exist, we're just going to give it an empty string. And then we'll yield this assistant message. And finally, once our assistant message is done streaming, we're going to append that to our messages array. All right, so now we can verify that this works. So of course, it's not going to have context yet because we haven't provided that logic, but we'll just make sure the interface works. All right, and as we can see, Gradio makes this super easy to display our chat interface. All right, so let's go ahead and verify that this works. All right, so we have our local URL. We're going to launch that. All right, and just to make sure the memory works, I'm going to tell it my name. So it streams out a message. Then I'm going to ask it, what is my name? Okay, cool. So we verified that it has memory. But if we ask it anything about OpenGL, we haven't provided that information. So of course it's not going to respond. So we're going to go ahead and implement that logic. So in order to query a similarity search for our message, we're going to say results is equal to vector store dot similarity search. So the query is going to be our message, and then we're going to set k equal to 5. So that means that it's going to query 5 similar chunks to our message. All right, so then if we get results back, we're going to create the string context. Okay, so each element in the similarity search is going to be an object, and the string contents are going to be called page content, right? So we're just iterating through and appending to this string. And then we'll append a new system message. All right, so it's really as simple as that. So now that we've done that, our large language model should have context for what we're talking about. So we'll go ahead and restart Gradio. Open this up. Okay, gotta run it first. Now we can open it up. All right, we'll just say hello. Hello, how can I assist you today? If you have questions regarding... All right, so we can see it's already asking us about OpenGL, even though we haven't asked it anything. So we'll say, what can you tell me about OpenGL? All right, cool. So now it's telling us things about OpenGL. So now the next step is to actually get this deployed to HuggingFace so that way anyone can use it. So now we can go ahead to the HuggingFace website. And we're going to go over to this Spaces tab, create a new space, and we're just going to name it whatever's relevant to your project. So I'm going to call mine OpenGL Tutor. And then the important thing is that we choose this Gradio SDK. And we're going to choose the blank template. You can make this public or private. It's up to you. Go ahead and create this. All right, so now it's going to give us the commands to clone this into our local machine so we can push all of our files. So you have the option of signing in with an HTTPS token or SSH. I personally have SSH set up, and if you don't know how to do that, they do have a tutorial on Hugging Face. So I'm going to copy this command. I'm going to go over to our command line. All right, so now we can change in that directory. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy all of our files from here into our OpenGL tutor. But we only want certain things. So we don't want our environment file because that's going to be publicly accessible and we don't want other people to see that. We also don't need to copy the vector database because that's just going to be way too much. And of course, we don't want our environment either. So the important thing is our app.py file, requirements.txt, and then the knowledge base. All right, so I'm going to change directories back into the directory we were just in. I'm going to say copy app.py, knowledge base, and requirements. And we're going to copy that into our new project. I'm going to make sure to specify the recursive option. Okay, cool. So we've copied and pasted all of that into there. Now we can go ahead and change directories. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start setting up our project so we can push it to Hugging Face. So in our knowledge base directory, since we have a bunch of PDFs, this is going to be too big to push on its own. So what we need is this Git LFS tool. All right, so you're going to install it with whatever package manager you have. And then we also need to install the Hugging Face command line tool. So if we go back to the website, it actually gives us the command to install that. All right, and then we need to start tracking these files. So to initialize Git LFS, we're just going to say Git LFS install. All right, we'll start tracking our PDF files. Okay, and the next we want to enable this on Hugging Faces in. All right, so now we can go ahead and start adding everything. All right, so with that all set up, we should be able to return to Hugging Face and get our project deployed. Okay, so you can see when you go to Hugging Face, it's building our project, but it is going to break because we haven't provided our OpenAI API key. So to fix that, we're going to go to settings over here. I'm going to scroll all the way down. We can see in variables and secrets, we want to add a new secret. So we're just going to call this OpenAI API key. We want to name it exactly that. And then we're going to paste in the value and save it. So I'll see you back here whenever I do that. All right, so now you can see that we have our API key saved. So all that's left is to go back to our project and wait for it to build. All right, so now we can see after waiting for a little bit, we now have our chatbot deployed on the Hugging Face. So we'll go ahead and make sure it works. All right, so it looks like it's working. And if you enjoyed this video, do be sure to like and subscribe. And if you have suggestions on what I should build in the future, then comment that below.